It's December the 7th, 1941. In the Pacific, Lieutenant Clarence Dickinson and his wingman are ordered to take off from the USS Enterprise by Admiral Halsey and fly their SBD Dauntless dive bombers to Pearl Harbor. It's a day that will live in infamy, as while the Dauntlesses head towards the base, hundreds of fighters and bombers from the Imperial Japanese Navy are in the middle of a devastating surprise attack. Torpedoes pummel the battleships and bombs rain on local squadrons before they have a chance to even take off. And unbeknownst to the two Dauntlesses, they are flying straight into it. As they get closer to Pearl Harbor, Dickinson notices a smoke cloud over the base up ahead. Seeing the smoke, Dickinson thinks the fields are being burned, or maybe it's gunnery practice.
Gonna catch hell for that.
But then he spots black puffs of anti-aircraft fire. The base is under attack. Then suddenly, two Zeros burst out of the smoke. The Dauntlesses are ill-suited for dogfighting, but the dogfight is already upon them. The two Zeros scream in from above and behind and open fire with their 20mm cannons aimed right at Dickinson's Dauntless. McCarthy, in the other plane, banks aggressively to the left, turning under Dickinson in an evasive maneuver. The Zeros miss Dickinson, but with McCarthy below and mid-turn, the Japanese gunfire slams into McCarthy's Dauntless instead. Meanwhile, Dickinson makes a gentler turn, keeping the aircraft steady, which is perfect for Miller as he opens fire in the rear.
Incoming!
Miller faces the two fighters, meeting them with his machine gun as they come straight at him. The Zeros shoot past them at incredible speed. Dickinson immediately pushes the nose down and feels a negative G-force as the Zeros slowly drift into his sight from below. He fires his four guns. But the Japanese have so much speed. The bullets don't find their mark, and the Zeros speed away.
They're pulling up and turning back. Reloading!
Dickinson catches a glimpse of McCarthy's aircraft. He's pouring oil, and then it bursts into flame.
McCarthy is going down.
They're relieved to see a parachute bloom, but also horrified as they see only one. More Zeros appear, closing in fast. Dickinson breaks into evasive maneuvers as the Japanese pilots open fire. Miller reloads and carries on firing. It's a hit!
Mr. Dickinson, think I got one of them.
Dickinson looks over his shoulder to see the plume of oil turn into a flaming inferno, but they still have four more on their tail. But it still flies on. However, the Japanese press their attack. It's just a matter of time now before it's over. Again and again the Americans are hit. Miller fires off his last bullet.
Are you alright, Miller? Mr. Dickinson? I've expended all 6 cans of ammunition.
Pit grows in Dickinson's stomach. Dickinson's mind drifts back to a conversation the two friends had earlier that day on the USS Enterprise.
It's our last flight together. Don't get me wet, sir.
Don't worry, kid. Just stick with me. Next thing you know, we'll be on the runway in Pearl.
Dickinson hears a blood-curdling scream. The aircraft stops responding to his stick. Dickinson is stuck, banking hard right. He pushes the rudder in a desperate bid to level out, but the aircraft instead drifts into an uncontrollable spin. Dickinson shouts to Miller one last time,
Miller!
in a fleeting hope that he's still alive. He undoes his belts and attempts to disconnect the radio, but he can't unplug the radio. With his belts unfastened and with his time rapidly running out, he grips the radio cable with both hands and snaps it in two. Then he jumps. The wind hits Dickinson in the face as he tumbles out of the doomed aircraft. He searches for the ripcord by feel. Jumping at just 800 feet, he has seconds before he hits the floor. His training kicks in, and he finds the cord and pulls hard. The chute blossoms open. He feels the tug slow him down, and then sees the ground rushing up. He hears his aircraft exploding into the earth somewhere nearby, just before he hits the floor. Dickinson quickly unbuckles and gets onto his feet. He's landed on a field, alone. He realizes with dread that Miller didn't make it. and his reassurance to keep him safe was a false promise.
Miller.
Back on the USS Enterprise, Admiral Halsey is fuming with rage as the reports come through. He knew the Japanese were up to something, but he could never have expected this.
All hands to battle stations!
The ship is immediately put on high alert and continues to Pearl Harbor at full speed. Dickinson manages to get himself to the airbase at Ford Island, where he immediately reports for duty. He didn't mention that he'd been shot down, so the commanding officer orders him to jump into an available Dauntless and scan the ocean for the Japanese fleet. Dickinson gladly agrees, with vengeance burning within him for his lost friend. But the Japanese slip away, leaving just submarines to patrol for American aircraft carriers. As the Enterprise finally reaches Pearl Harbor, Halsey is a driven man, pushing to get the Enterprise refueled and supplied and back out to sea in just 6 hours. Dickinson makes his way back on board. All of the men under Halsey's command are burning with vengeance, and none more than Dickinson. Halsey gives the order to shoot the enemy on sight. Back out at sea now, the Enterprise sends aircraft in round-the-clock patrols. Dickinson is one of the most active, scouring the waters around Hawaii, loaded with bombs and eager for revenge. And 3 days after the attack, the Japanese show themselves once again. Another Enterprise pilot sees a clear shape of a Japanese submarine on the surface of the water, recharging its batteries.
Contact. Enemy submarine.
But the enemy sees him coming.
爆撃機が来るぞ!
The alarm is sounded, and the crew of the I-70 submarine scramble for an emergency dive. On the I-70, that's at least 90 seconds. It's a race against time. The pilot angles down on his attack run while arming his singular 1,000-pound bomb. The dive bomber picks up speed as it races down. The pilot has his eyes locked on target. He can't release yet. The ship is submerging into the waves before his eyes. As early as he dare, he lets the bomb fly, wishing it to hit the target. The bomb falls into the sea and explodes against the submarine's flank. The Japanese sailors hear a massive explosion. The ballast tanks are damaged, so before they'll be able to dive safely, they need to make repairs.
Missed. It's still sailing.
Damn it! Send more aircraft!
On deck, another flight of Dauntlesses is prepared. Among them, Dickinson, this time with a young gunner taking Miller's position.
Sail 4, ready for takeoff. Copy, Sail 4. Exercise caution. Submarines detected in the area. I'm counting on it.
They take off. Back on the I-70, the Japanese crew are performing emergency repairs. For the time being, they're stuck sailing on the surface when a lookout spots an American Dauntless in the sky.
アメリカの飛行機だ!
Up above, Dickinson sees the submarine silhouette floating on the waves. Vengeance is within sight.
This is Sail 4. Have sighted submarine.
5,000 feet over the waves, Dickinson arms a bomb
Am attacking.
and throws his Dauntless into a dive. The aircraft rapidly speeds up. Below, the Japanese turn their guns to meet his charge.
撃て!
A column of tracers shoots up from the target, headed for the Dauntless, but Dickinson tries his best to ignore the enemy. Bullets zip past the canopy, narrowly missing the two men as they plunge head first towards the enemy fire. The Japanese gunners throw everything at the Dauntless, screaming towards them. They manage to get several hits on target, but the strength of the Dauntless and the determination of the pilot are not to be swayed. The Japanese gunners stare at the heavens in dread as the bomb continues on its path, straight towards them. The whistle of death piercing through the sounds of combat. It strikes the water. The gunners are instantly blown off the deck, and the ship suddenly loses all power. The lifeblood of the I-70 is seen as oil starts to pool on the surface.
It was close. Did we get him?
Dickinson turns the aircraft around, looking over the ship. They can see the deck crew underwater, and the oil slick, and smoke. But the ship seems otherwise unharmed.
Effects on target? Unclear.
For a second, it appears the sub has been damaged but survived. It submerges into the waves, disappearing from view.
It's submerged.
A lone bubble hits the surface. Dickinson stares intently. When suddenly, a massive ball of bubbles gushes out of the sea.
Submarine sunk. I see oil and debris.
Relief washes over the crew. Dickinson hears over the radio as a few allow themselves a small celebration.
This one was for you, Miller.
The I-70 was the first large Japanese ship sunk in the war. The USS Enterprise had started the fight back, and Dickinson had avenged his friend.
God knows what the Japanese are thinking. If only we could know what their plans are from the Japanese perspective.
If you watch this film, sir, on Midway from the Japanese perspective, then maybe we can find out.